When most people in the world hear the word marketing, they don't immediately think of Jesus. More likely, they think of catchy commercials and flashy billboards and people trying to sell them things that they don't really need. Meanwhile, ministry sounds sacred, mission-driven, and much more holy than an Instagram ad. For a long time, Christian leaders in many cultures have wrestled with this tension. Is marketing too worldly for the church? Does inviting people to give, serve, or participate somehow cheapen the gospel? Shouldn't God's work just speak for itself? It's a fair concern, it's a fair question, but the reality is no one wants to reduce faith to a sales pitch. But here is the twist. Marketing, when done right, is actually a deeply biblical concept. In fact, Jesus in many ways was the greatest marketer of all time, not because he had some kind of a slick campaign strategy, but because he knew how to invite people into something bigger than themselves. Think about how Jesus introduced people to his mission. He did not bombard them with facts, figures, or fear tactics. He didn't guilt trip them into following him. Instead, he extended a simple, compelling invitation. Come, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. That was it. No sales pitch, no theological dissertation, no pressure. Just a few words that spoke directly to their identity and purpose. And what happened? Peter and Andrew just dropped their nets on the spot and followed him. You see, Jesus knew something about human nature that modern marketing experts have also discovered. People don't respond to information. They respond to stories. They respond to relationships. They respond to an invitation that speaks to their longing for purpose. Seth Godin, who's one of the most well-known marketing voices today, captures it when he says, people don't buy goods and services, they buy relationships and stories. The same is true in ministry. People don't engage with causes because of numbers. They engage because they see themselves in the story of what God is doing. The gospel is the greatest invitation ever extended, and Jesus was the greatest inviter. Marketing, when done with integrity, is simply inviting people into what God is already doing. And God has been using invitation-based ministry since the very beginning. Moses invited the Israelites to bring their gifts and skills to build their tabernacle. We read that in Exodus. David invited people to give toward building the temple, even though he would never see it completed. We read that in 1 Chronicles. Paul invited the early church to partner with him in spreading the gospel, as we read in Philippians. God's kingdom has always moved forward through personal invitations to generosity, service, and mission. Marketing is simply the modern-day tool we use to extend that same invitation. Long before social media, the early church had its own marketing strategy, testimony, and relationships. Acts 2 paints the picture of a church so committed to community, generosity, and worship that others naturally wanted to join them. They didn't have billboards or ad campaigns, but what they had was far more powerful. They had lives that reflected the gospel so beautifully that others were drawn in. They had a faith that was so compelling that people couldn't help but spread the word. Even Jesus used what we would today label as word-of-mouth marketing. The Samaritan woman at the well, remember her? She didn't just believe in private. She ran back to town and invited everybody, saying, "Come, see a man who told me everything I ever did." Marketing, at its best, isn't about manipulation or pressure. It's about helping people see where they fit in God's greater story. Yet, Many ministries fall into the trap of treating marketing as purely transactional at best, or worse, as some kind of necessary evil. They ask for donations and they highlight the need, but they forget to connect the dots between giving and discipleship. Paul understood this when he wrote to the church in Philippi, thanking them not just for their generosity, but for their partnership in the gospel. He didn't see them as donors. He saw them as co-laborers in God's mission. Marketing at its core is hospitality. It is creating a welcoming opportunity where people feel invited into something meaningful. Jesus' words in John 1:39 are the perfect model for ministry marketing. Come and see. He didn't pressure, he didn't argue, he simply invited people to experience transformation for themselves. If our ministries do the same, if we focus on relational invitations over transactional appeals, we would see giving, serving, and discipleship flourish. The future of ministry engagement depends on this shift. Churches and organizations that embrace relational, story-driven, invitation-based marketing will thrive. Those that rely on outdated, transactional models will struggle. Look, the church, the mission of the church is not just about reaching people, right? But it's about transforming them. And that's what marketing is supposed to do. It should not just inform, but invite. And of course, this isn't just for organizations or companies. Every Christian, all of us, we're all called to be an inviter into God's work, whether through sharing your testimony, inviting someone to serve, or helping someone to see their giving as an act of faith. You are part of God's marketing team. So let's rethink ministry marketing. Let's make it bold and joyful, invitational, and deeply kingdom-centered, because at the end of the day, the gospel is the greatest invitation ever given. Jesus still says to the world, come and see. And we are his hands and feet to extend that invitation.